The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the polished marble floor as Andre Reynolds stepped through the revolving doors of the Pinnacle, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. At 45, Andre carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had fought for every achievement in his life. As the founder and CEO of Horizon Innovations, a tech company valued at over $2 billion, he had risen from humble beginnings in a small apartment shared with his grandmother to become one of the most respected business leaders in the country. Tonight was important. After months of negotiations, Andre was finally meeting with potential investors who could help take his company global. The reservation at the Pinnacle, with its coveted VIP section overlooking the city skyline, was his way of showing these investors they were valued. He had personally called 3 weeks ago to book the space, speaking directly with the restaurant owner who had assured him everything would be perfect. Andre checked his watch, a simple, elegant timepiece that had been a gift to himself when his company first turned a profit. He was early, as always. Being prompt was a habit he'd developed early in life, something his grandmother had instilled in him. "The world won't wait for you," she used to say. "You need to be twice as prepared, twice as punctual, and twice as professional as everyone else." Those words had followed him throughout his journey. The restaurant's interior was a masterpiece of understated wealth, soft lighting, handcrafted wooden tables and artwork from renowned artists adorning the walls. A crystal chandelier hung from the ceiling, casting rainbow prisms across the room. The place hummed with the gentle murmur of conversation and the occasional clink of fine china. A host approached, clipboard in hand. "Good evening, sir. Do you have a reservation?" "Yes, I do," Andre replied, straightening his custom-tailored navy suit jacket. "Reynolds, party of 5. I reserved the VIP section." The host scanned his list, his finger moving down the page. There was a brief flash of something in his eyes, surprise perhaps, or hesitation, before his professional demeanor returned. "Of course, Mr. Reynolds, please follow me." As they walked through the main dining area, Andre noticed the glances. He was used to them by now. The subtle double takes, the quickly averted eyes, the whispers behind hands. Being one of the few black executives in the tech industry meant he was often the only person who looked like him in these spaces. Years ago it might have bothered him, but now he used it as fuel. Every raised eyebrow just reminded him how far he'd come, and how much further he still needed to go. The VIP section was separated from the main dining room by a curved wall of tinted glass, offering privacy while still allowing a view of the entire restaurant. A single table sat in the center, larger than the others and draped with a cream-colored tablecloth. Floor-to-ceiling windows provided a breathtaking panorama of the city below, now beginning to light up as dusk settled. "Will this be suitable, Mr. Reynolds?" the host asked, pulling out a chair. Andre nodded, taking in the view. "Yes, this is perfect. My guests will arrive in about 45 minutes. I'll have a sparkling water for now." "Right away, sir." Left alone, Andre took out his phone and reviewed his presentation one more time. The numbers were solid, the projections realistic yet ambitious. Horizon Innovations had developed a revolutionary cloud security system that could protect data better than anything currently on the market. The technology wasn't just innovative, it was necessary in a world where data breaches were becoming commonplace. A server appeared with his sparkling water, placing it on a coaster without a word before disappearing again. Andre took a sip and returned to his preparations, making notes on key points he wanted to emphasize during the dinner. His phone buzzed with a text from his assistant. "Investors running 15 minutes late. Traffic from airport." Andre texted back a quick acknowledgement. The delay would give him more time to center himself. These moments before big meetings were precious to him, a chance to gather his thoughts and calm his mind. He thought about how much was riding on tonight's dinner. Horizon Innovations was poised for incredible growth, but they needed this investment to make it happen. 5 years of relentless work, countless sleepless nights, and overcoming obstacle after obstacle had led to this moment. The journey hadn't been easy. Andre had started with nothing but a laptop and an idea, working out of his small apartment. His first attempts to secure funding had been met with rejections, sometimes subtle, sometimes blatant. "Your idea is interesting, but not quite what we're looking for right now. We don't see the market potential. Come back when you have more traction." He'd heard every version of no possible, But Andre had persisted, bootstrapping his company, taking side jobs to keep the lights on, and slowly building his team with people who shared his vision. The first breakthrough came when a small angel investor took a chance on them, providing just enough capital to develop a prototype. From there, things had accelerated. Now Horizon Innovations employed over 200 people. They had offices in 3 cities. Their client list included Fortune 500 companies and government agencies. And tonight, if all went well, they would secure the funding needed to expand internationally. The server returned, this time accompanied by the restaurant manager, a tall woman with her hair pulled back in a tight bun. She smiled warmly. "Mr. Reynolds, welcome to the Pinnacle. My name is Lynn, and I'm the evening manager. Is there anything special we can arrange for your meeting tonight?" "Thank you, Lynn," Andre replied. "I've pre-ordered the chef's tasting menu with wine pairings for everyone, but I'd also like to have some appetizers ready when my guests arrive." "Of course. Our chef has prepared a selection of his signature dishes. Would you like to see the wine list again to make sure our pairings meet your expectations?" Andre nodded. "That would be great." As Lynn left to retrieve the wine list, Andre stood and walked to the window. The city stretched out below him, a tapestry of lights against the darkening sky. From this height, he could see the building where he'd rented his first proper office, a tiny space with just enough room for 3 desks and a small meeting area. He smiled at the memory of those early days, the excitement and fear intermingling as they worked to turn their vision into reality. His phone buzzed again. His chief technology officer, whom he'd invited to join the dinner, was sending him updated figures on their latest security test. The results were even better than expected. Their system had withstood a simulated attack that had breached their competitors' defenses. Andre felt a surge of pride. His team had done exceptional work. Many had taken pay cuts to join a startup with an uncertain future, believing in him and his vision when few others did. Tonight's meeting wasn't just about his success. It was about validating their trust in him. Lynn returned with the wine list, a leather-bound book with detailed descriptions of each vintage. "Our sommelier will be available throughout your dinner if you have any questions," she explained. "And the chef wants you to know that he's preparing something special for dessert." "Thank you, I appreciate the attention to detail," Andre said, glancing over the selections. He pointed to a particular red wine. "I've heard great things about this one. Would you recommend it with the main course?" Lynn nodded, clearly impressed by his choice. "An excellent selection, Mr. Reynolds. That would pair beautifully with the chef's signature dish." As she walked away, Andre noticed several staff members near the entrance to the VIP section, glancing in his direction before quickly looking away when they realized he'd noticed. He was used to this too. The curiosity, sometimes the surprise. Even in 2025, people still carried their biases and expectations. Andre returned to his seat and checked his watch again. His investors would be arriving soon. He took a deep breath, centering himself the way he did before every important meeting. He thought of his grandmother's words. "Remember who you are and where you come from, but never let anyone tell you where you can go." A movement at the entrance caught his eye. A group of people had arrived, but they weren't his investors. A white man in an expensive suit was talking animatedly to the host who had seated Andre earlier. The man kept gesturing toward the VIP section, his voice just low enough that Andre couldn't make out the words. But something about the man's body language, the way he kept glancing over at Andre, sent a familiar chill down his spine. Andre had seen that look before. He recognized what was coming next. He straightened his shoulders and prepared himself for whatever was about to happen. Years of experience had taught him that moments like these defined not just how others saw him, but how he saw himself. Whatever challenge was approaching, he would face it with the same determination that had built Horizon Innovations from nothing. The host was now walking toward him, the white man and the manager following closely behind. The expression on the host's face told Andre everything he needed to know. The evening he had so carefully planned was about to take an unexpected turn. The host reached Andre's table first, his professional smile now strained at the edges. Behind him, Lynn, the manager, looked uncomfortable, while the white man in the expensive suit stood with his hands in his pockets, rocking slightly on his heels with impatience. "Mr. Reynolds," the host began, his voice lowered, "I'm terribly sorry, but there seems to have been a misunderstanding with your reservation." Andre placed his phone down slowly. "A misunderstanding?" I booked this section 3 weeks ago. I spoke directly with the owner. Lynn stepped forward, subtly positioning herself between Andre and the man behind her. Mr. Reynolds, I do see your reservation in our system. However, Mr. Whitfield here, she gestured to the man, is a special guest of the owner. He's requested the VIP section for his party this evening. Andre looked past her to the man, Whitfield, who was now checking his watch with exaggerated movements, as if each second spent discussing the matter was a personal inconvenience. My investors will be here in 30 minutes, Andre said calmly. I specifically booked this section because of the privacy it offers for our discussion. Surely there are other tables available for Mr. Whitfield and his guests. Whitfield stepped forward, his cologne arriving a moment before he did. Look, I don't mean to interrupt, but this is taking too long. My guests include the mayor's chief of staff and the chairman of Regional Bank. We need this section. He glanced around the space as if he already owned it. I'm sure you understand that the way he said you carried a weight that Andre had heard countless times before, a subtle emphasis that turned a simple pronoun into something loaded with assumptions and dismissals. What? I understand, Andre replied, maintaining his composure, is that I have a confirmed reservation for this section. My meeting is equally important. Whitfield's eyebrows rose slightly. Really? And what exactly do you do, Mr. Reynolds? Andre Reynolds. I'm the founder and CEO of Horizon Innovations. There was a flicker of recognition in Whitfield's eyes, quickly masked. Horizon Innovations was big enough now that the name carried weight in business circles. But instead of backing down, Whitfield seemed to double down on his position. Well, no offense to your startup, but my guests are influential people who value their privacy. The owner of this establishment is a personal friend, and he always makes sure this section is available when I need it. Andre felt a familiar heat rising in his chest, the slow burn of anger carefully contained by years of practice. He'd been in this position before, having his accomplishments minimized, his presence questioned, his right to occupy certain spaces challenged. Each time he had to make the same calculation, how to stand his ground without being labeled difficult or aggressive. Horizon Innovations is hardly a startup, Andre replied evenly. We employ over 200 people across 3 offices. And more importantly, I have a confirmed reservation. Lynn looked increasingly uncomfortable. Perhaps we can offer a compromise. Mr. Reynolds, we have a lovely table in our main dining area that's relatively private. Relatively private isn't good enough for what I need tonight, Andre interrupted, his voice firm but not raised. I'm discussing sensitive business matters that require complete privacy. Whitfield sighed loudly. This is ridiculous. I don't have time for this, he turned to Lynn. Call Raymond. Tell him I'm here and there's an issue with my usual table. Lynn hesitated, looking between the two men. I'll see what I can do. She stepped away, pulling out her phone. The host remained, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Mr. Reynolds, please understand our position. Mr. Whitfield is a longtime patron and I'm not, Andre asked. This is my 5th time hosting a business dinner here in the past year. I've brought numerous clients here. I've spent thousands of dollars at this establishment. What exactly makes Mr. Whitfield's reservation more important than mine? The question hung in the air, unanswered but understood by everyone present. Andre knew what made the difference. He'd faced this subtle discrimination throughout his career, being asked to move, to wait, to accept less than what he'd rightfully earned or paid for. Lynn returned, her expression grim. I spoke with the owner, Mr. Raymond Chen. He's asked that we accommodate Mr. Whitfield this evening. She couldn't quite meet Andre's eyes. He's offered to comp your entire meal if you'd be willing to move to another table. Andre felt his jaw tighten. So my reservation means nothing? It's not that, Lynn said quickly. It's just that some customers take priority over others, Andre finished for her. Based on what exactly? No one answered. Whitfield checked his watch again. My guest will be here in 10 minutes. Is this resolved yet? Andre stood, his full height making the host take a small step back. At 6'2", Andre had learned early on to be mindful of his physical presence, another unfair calculation he'd had to make throughout his life. Let me be very clear, he said, keeping his voice measured. I have a valid reservation for this section. I'm meeting with potential investors who are flying in specifically for this dinner. Moving us would significantly impact our ability to have the private conversation we need to have. A new voice entered the conversation, a large man in a dark suit who had appeared at the entrance to the VIP section. "Is there a problem here?" Lynn turned, relief washing over her face. "Thomas, there's been a reservation conflict." Thomas, who Andre guessed was either security or a senior manager based on how others deferred to him, surveyed the situation. His eyes lingered on Andre for a beat longer than necessary, before turning to Whitfield. "Mr. Whitfield, good evening. We'll have this sorted out right away." The immediate recognition, the assured tone, it told Andre everything he needed to know about how this situation would unfold. "I've been trying to explain," Whitfield said, his voice taking on a hint of victimhood, "that I always have this section when I bring important guests. It seems there was some mix-up with the booking system." Thomas nodded sympathetically before turning to Andre. "Sir, I understand this is frustrating, but we need to prepare this section for Mr. Whitfield's party. We have an excellent table by the window in the main dining area that we can set up for you immediately." Andre took a deep breath. "My name is Andre Reynolds. I'm the CEO of Horizon Innovations. I made this reservation 3 weeks ago, confirmed it yesterday, and arrived early to prepare for my meeting. I've been a regular customer here for over a year, and now you're asking me to move because someone else wants my table?" Thomas's expression hardened slightly. "Mr. Reynolds, I understand your frustration, but this is how we need to proceed this evening." "Because Mr. Whitfield is friends with the owner?" Andre pressed. "Because Mr. Whitfield has a standing arrangement for this section," Thomas replied, his tone becoming less patient. Andre looked around at the faces watching him, the host avoiding eye contact, Lynn looking genuinely distressed, Thomas growing more stern, and Whitfield with a barely concealed expression of satisfaction. This wasn't just about a table. This was about who belonged in which spaces, whose comfort mattered more, whose business was valued higher. Andre's phone buzzed. A text from his chief technology officer, traffic clearing. Be there in 20 minutes. He needed to make a decision. Creating a scene would only reinforce stereotypes. Giving in felt like a betrayal of everything he'd worked for. Either way, the evening was already tainted. "If I refuse to move?" Andre asked, testing the boundaries. Thomas straightened. "Then I'd have to insist, sir. For the comfort of all our guests." The implication was clear. Andre gathered his documents, sliding them into his leather portfolio. "I want to speak to the owner directly," he said. "Not over the phone. In person." "Mr. Chen isn't on the premises this evening," Thomas replied too quickly. "Then I'll wait until he is," Andre said, "because I want him to explain to my face why my reservation wasn't honored." Whitfield sighed dramatically. "This is becoming absurd. My guests are arriving any minute." As if on cue, the host's radio crackled. "Mr. Whitfield's party has arrived at the front." Thomas moved closer to Andre, lowering his voice. "Mr. Reynolds, please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. We can provide excellent service at another table, with complimentary drinks and appetizers for your inconvenience." Andre looked him directly in the eye. "This isn't about drinks or appetizers. This is about respect." For a moment, something like understanding flickered across Thomas's face, but it vanished quickly, replaced by professional detachment. "Your options are to accept our alternate arrangement or to leave. Mr. Reynolds, I'm sorry, but that's the situation." Andre looked past Thomas to where Whitfield was already directing staff about how he wanted the table arranged, as if Andre had already left. The casual entitlement, the ease with which he'd displaced someone else. Without a second thought, it was a perfect example of the invisible barriers Andre had fought against his entire career. What happened next would define more than just this evening. It would set a precedent for how he allowed himself to be treated, for what he was willing to accept, for what message he would send to his team who looked to him for leadership. Andre straightened his suit jacket and made his decision. The night was far from over, and this confrontation was about to take a turn that no one in the Pinnacle restaurant could possibly. The lead investor shook her head. "You have nothing to apologize for. The question is, what happens now? Our flight leaves tomorrow afternoon, and we need to have this discussion before then." Andre looked at his watch. It was just past 7. The night was still young, and he refused to let this setback derail everything he'd worked for. "I have an idea," he said, pulling out his phone and scrolling through his contacts. "But first I need to make a call." His team exchanged glances, recognizing the expression on his face. It was the same look he got when facing any challenge, focused, determined, already seeing 3 moves ahead. Whatever had just happened in that restaurant was far from over. In fact, it was just the beginning. Andre stepped away from the group to make his call, walking a few paces down the sidewalk for privacy. The cool evening air helped clear his head, washing away some of the burning humiliation he'd felt inside the restaurant. His team and the investors waited nearby, their concerned conversations a low murmur behind him. He scrolled through his contacts until he found the name he was looking for. Gabriela Torres, his company's head of legal affairs. If anyone would know what to do next, it would be her, she answered on the second ring. Andre, I thought you were at your dinner meeting. There's been a change of plans, he said, keeping his voice even. I need you to look up something for me immediately. Search our investment portfolio for any connection to a restaurant called The Pinnacle or its owner, Raymond Chen. Give me a minute, Gabriela replied, the sound of typing coming through the phone. Andre waited, watching the traffic pass on the street. A couple entered The Pinnacle, smiling and unaware of what had just transpired inside. Andre, I've found something. Gabriela's voice returned, now sharper with interest. Last year, we approved a significant investment through Green Valley Fund. It was a 30% stake in Chen Hospitality Group. Andre closed his eyes briefly. And The Pinnacle is part of Chen Hospitality Group? Yes, it's their flagship restaurant. According to the investment report, it's the most profitable venue in their portfolio. Andre, what's going on? I'll explain later. Right now, I need you to pull up the investment agreement. Check the conditions we placed on that investment. More typing. Then standard legal language. Ethical business practices. Non-discrimination clause. Compliance with all applicable civil rights laws. Andre, did something happen? Yes, he said simply. And I need you to send me a copy of that agreement right away. Text it to my phone. Then I need you to meet us at the office in 45 minutes. After ending the call, Andre stood still for a moment, processing this new information. His company owned a 30% stake in the very restaurant that had just thrown him out. The irony was almost too much to bear. He walked back to the group where his chief financial officer, Patrice, was already working her phone. I've found us a backup, she said. The executive dining room at the Grand Hotel. They can take us in an hour. It's not ideal, but change of plans, Andre interrupted. We're going to the office, Dr. Kwan frowned. The office? Andre, these people flew across the country to meet with us. The lead investor stepped forward. Actually, I'm quite interested to see your headquarters. Sometimes you learn more about a company from seeing their workspace than from a fancy dinner. Andre nodded gratefully. Excellent. I promise it will be worth your time. He turned to Jonathan. Call ahead. Have the catering service we use for board meetings prepare something for us. Their best menu, whatever they can manage on short notice. As they walked toward their waiting cars, Andre felt his phone buzz with the incoming file from Gabriela. He quickly scanned the document, focusing on the relevant sections. By the time they reached the vehicles, a plan was forming in his mind. The drive to Horizon Innovations headquarters took 20 minutes. Andre rode with the investors, using the time to explain what had happened at the restaurant without bitterness or anger, just a straightforward account of the facts. The interesting part, he concluded, as they pulled up to the sleek glass building that housed his company, is that Horizon Innovations actually owns a significant stake in that restaurant's parent company. The lead investor's eyebrows shot up. You're joking. I wish I were, Andre replied. We invested through a fund last year. 30% ownership. The investors exchanged glances. That's quite a revelation, the lead investor said carefully. It certainly is, Andre agreed. And now I need to decide what to do about it. Inside the building, they found the conference room transformed. The catering team had worked minor miracles. White tablecloths covered the long table. Fine china had been set out and the smell of gourmet food filled the air. Bottles of wine stood ready, and soft lighting gave the room an almost restaurant-like atmosphere. Gabriela was waiting for them, tablet in hand. She greeted the investors warmly before pulling Andre aside. I've reviewed everything, she said quietly. You have grounds for action based on the anti-discrimination provisions in our investment agreement. What do you want to do? For now, let's focus on our meeting, Andre replied. But afterward, I want to discuss options. The dinner meeting proceeded better than Andre could have hoped. Away from the restaurant's stifling atmosphere, everyone relaxed. The conversation flowed easily as they discussed Horizon Innovation's expansion plans, financial projections, and market strategy. The investors asked tough questions but seemed impressed by the answers. By the time dessert was served, it was clear they were leaning toward making the investment. "I have to say," the lead investor remarked as she sipped her coffee, "this evening has been unexpectedly illuminating. Not just about your business model, but about your character. Andre, the way you handled that situation at the restaurant with dignity and restraint says a lot about how you would handle adversity in business." Andre nodded his thanks. "I believe how we respond to challenges defines us more than the challenges themselves." As the investors prepared to leave, promises were made to finalize details in the morning. Andre walked them to the elevator, thanking them for their flexibility. Back in the conference room, his core team waited, along with Gabriella. The atmosphere had shifted from celebratory to serious. "So," Patrice said, leaning forward, "what are we going to do about the Pinnacle?" Andre took a seat at the head of the table. "We have options. Gabriella has confirmed that our investment agreement gives us certain rights." Gabriella nodded. "The non-discrimination clause is very clear. What happened tonight is a textbook violation. We could potentially force management changes or even divest with penalties. But is that what we want?" Andre asked, looking around at his team. "Punishment isn't always the most effective response." Dr. Kwan tapped her fingers thoughtfully on the table. "What if we turn this into an opportunity instead? Use our influence to create change rather than just extract revenge?" Jonathan, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "The media would have a field day with this story. Black CEO thrown out of restaurant his company partly owns. It would be a PR nightmare for them." Andre shook his head. "I'm not interested in public humiliation even if they deserve it. That doesn't solve the underlying problem." He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. Behind him, the team waited for his decision. This was why they respected him, why they had followed him from a tiny startup to a major player in the tech industry. His ability to see beyond the immediate reaction, to find the strategic response that would yield the best long-term results. "Here's what we're going to do," Andre said finally, turning back to face them. "Tomorrow morning I'm going to call Mr. Chen directly. Not as an angry customer, but as a major investor in his business. I'll explain exactly what happened, and I'll make it clear that we expect changes." "What kind of changes?" Patrice asked. "Systemic ones," Andre replied. "New training programs for all staff. A review of their reservation policies to ensure they're being applied equally, and most importantly, consequences for the people who made those decisions tonight." Gabriella nodded slowly. "We have the leverage to demand that. But what if Chen refuses? Then we use every legal option available to us under the investment agreement," Andre said. "But I don't think it will come to that. Once he understands that 30% of his company is at stake, I believe he'll listen." The team discussed details for another hour, crafting a precise strategy for the next day's conversation. By the time they finished, it was nearly midnight. The others left, but Andre remained in his office staring at Raymond Chen's business card. He thought about the look on Whitfield's face when he'd gotten his way. He thought about Thomas, the manager, calling security rather than enforcing a valid reservation. He thought about the host's discomfort and Lynn's awkward attempts to smooth things over. None of it was new. He'd faced similar situations throughout his career, throughout his life. The difference now was that he had the power to do something about it, not just for himself, but for anyone else who might walk into that restaurant and be judged by their appearance rather than their reservation. His phone buzzed with a text from the lead investor. "Contract terms look good. Ready to proceed tomorrow." "And Andre? Make them fix that restaurant." Andre smiled slightly. He picked up Chen's business card again, then set a reminder in his phone for 8 a.m. Tomorrow would be an interesting day for the owner of the Pinnacle. As he gathered his things to head home, he felt none of the anger or humiliation that had threatened to overwhelm him earlier. Instead, there was a calm sense of purpose. This wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. It was about making sure that the next person who looked like him wouldn't face the same treatment. And perhaps most importantly, it was about using his position of power to create change, rather than simply benefiting from that power himself. That, he believed, was the true responsibility of leadership. Andre arrived at his office the next morning earlier than usual. The sky was just beginning to lighten, casting a soft glow through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Horizon Innovations building. He had slept surprisingly well, the clarity of purpose washing away the lingering sting of the previous night's humiliation. His assistant had already placed a fresh cup of coffee on his desk, along with the morning's financial reports, but those could wait. Andre set them aside and pulled out Raymond Chen's business card, turning it over in his fingers as he considered his approach. At precisely 8 a.m., he dialed the number. The call went to voicemail. Andre left a brief message. "Mr. Chen, this is Andre Reynolds, CEO of Horizon Innovations. We need to speak today regarding a serious incident at the Pinnacle last night. Please call me back as soon as possible." He had just set down his phone when it rang, not Chen returning his call, but Gabriella from legal. "I've prepared the documents you requested," she said without preamble. "Full breakdown of our investment terms, the relevant clauses on discrimination, and 3 options for moving forward ranging from moderate to severe." "Thank you," Andre replied. "I'm hoping for a reasonable conversation, but it's good to be prepared. The investment team is also standing by," Gabriella added. "If we need to discuss divestment, they're ready to calculate the financial impact." Andre ended the call and turned to the wall of glass that overlooked the city. Somewhere out there was the Pinnacle, probably preparing for another day of catering to guests like Whitfield, people who expected the world to bend to their presence. His phone rang again. This time the caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. Andre Reynolds speaking. "Mr. Reynolds." The voice was careful, measured. "This is Raymond Chen. I received your message." Andre took a breath. "Thank you for calling back so quickly, Mr. Chen. I'm sure you're aware of what happened at your restaurant last night." A pause. "I received a report, yes. I understand there was a misunderstanding about a reservation." "It wasn't a misunderstanding," Andre replied, keeping his voice level. "It was discrimination. I had a confirmed reservation for the VIP section. I arrived early. I was seated. Then I was asked to move because Mr. Whitfield wanted the table. Mr. Whitfield is a long-time customer. So am I," Andre interrupted. "But that's not why I'm calling. I'm calling as an investor." Silence on the line, Andre continued. "Horizon Innovations owns 30% of Chen Hospitality Group through Green Valley Fund. Are you aware of that?" I was not made aware that you were connected to Green Valley." Chen's voice had lost some of its certainty. "Well, now you know. And our investment agreement contains very specific language about discriminatory practices. What happened last night was a clear violation of those terms." Chen cleared his throat. "Mr. Reynolds, I apologize for any inconvenience." "This isn't about inconvenience," Andre cut in. "This is about a pattern of behavior that needs to change. I've reviewed the security footage from your restaurant." This was a bluff. Andre hadn't seen any footage, but it was a calculated one. "The footage shows that I was removed from my reserved table because a white patron wanted it. It shows your staff prioritizing him over me despite my valid reservation. It shows security being called when my team rightfully questioned this decision." Chen was silent for a long moment. "Then what do you want, Mr. Reynolds?" "I want a meeting. Today, with you and your senior management team. At the Pinnacle. 1 hour after you open." "We open for lunch at 11:30, Chen said quietly. "Then I'll see you at 12:30. Don't bother preparing a table. We won't be eating." The Pinnacle looked different in the daytime. Sunlight streamed through the windows that had shown only city lights the night before. The dining room was half full with the lunch crowd, business people in suits discussing deals over expensive meals. Andre wasn't alone this time. He brought Gabriella, Patrice, Dr. Kwan, and Jonathan. They were his strength, his backup, the team that had helped build Horizon Innovations from nothing. The host at the front desk, a different one from the night before, recognized Andre immediately. His eyes widened. "Mr. Reynolds, welcome back to the Pinnacle. Mr. Chen is expecting you in the private dining room." The host led them past the main dining area and the VIP section, where last night's drama had unfolded. Beyond that was a smaller room with a round table. Raymond Chen stood as they entered, a man in his 60s with silver-streaked hair and the careful posture of someone preparing for a difficult conversation. He wasn't alone. With him were Lin from the night before, Thomas the security manager, and two other men in expensive suits, likely other executives from Chen Hospitality Group. "Mr. Reynolds," Chen began, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming. I want to personally apologize for your experience last night." Andre shook his hand briefly. "I appreciate that, but an apology isn't why I'm here." They all took seats around the table. Andre noticed that Lin couldn't quite meet his eyes, while Thomas maintained the same professional mask he had worn the previous evening. Chen gestured to a folder in front of him. "I've reviewed the incident report and I agree that the situation was handled poorly. We're prepared to offer you complimentary dining privileges for a year as compensation." Andre exchanged glances with Gabriella, who gave a tiny shake of her head. This was exactly the kind of superficial response they had anticipated. "Mr. Chen," Andre said, leaning forward slightly, "I'm not interested in free meals. I'm interested in structural change." He nodded to Patrice, who opened her tablet and pulled up a document, turning it so everyone could see. "This is our investment agreement with Chen Hospitality Group," Andre explained. "Section 12 specifically prohibits discriminatory practices of any kind. What happened last night wasn't just poor customer service, it was a violation of this legally binding agreement." The men in suits shifted uncomfortably. One leaned over to whisper something to Chen, who nodded gravely. "What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Reynolds?" Chen asked. Andre laid out his terms clearly. "First, the employees directly responsible for the incident need to face appropriate consequences. I'm not asking for anyone to lose their job, but there must be accountability." Thomas straightened in his chair, his expression darkening. "Second, every employee in every one of your restaurants needs comprehensive training on unconscious bias and equitable customer service. Not a 1-hour video, but real ongoing education." Andre pointed to the VIP section visible through the doorway. "Third, your reservation policies need to be transparent and applied equally to all customers. No more special treatment based on who someone knows or what they look like." He turned back to Chen. "And finally, I want to see meaningful diversity in your hiring practices, particularly in management positions." Chen was quiet for a moment, considering. The executive to his right leaned in again, whispering urgently, but Chen held up a hand to silence him. "And if we refuse?" Chen asked. Gabriella spoke for the first time. "Then we would be forced to exercise our rights under the investment agreement. That could include forced management changes or divestment with penalties, which would likely become public," Jonathan added quietly. The room fell silent. The implications were clear. A public battle would damage the Pinnacle's reputation far more than quietly implementing Andre's proposals. Lynn cleared her throat. "For what it's worth, I believe Mr. Reynolds is right. What happened last night was wrong. It's not the first time we've bent the rules for certain customers, but it should be the last." Thomas shot her a look of betrayal, but she continued. "I've worked here for 8 years. I've seen patterns that made me uncomfortable, but I never felt empowered to speak up." Chen studied her for a long moment, then turned back to Andre. "Give us the room for 5 minutes." Andre nodded, and his team followed him out to the main restaurant. They stood near the entrance watching as diners enjoyed their meals, oblivious to the power struggle happening just rooms away. "He'll agree," Patrice predicted. "The financial risk is too great otherwise." Dr. Kwan nodded. "Yes, but will he implement the changes sincerely, or just go through the motions?" "That's where our 30% stake comes in," Andre replied. "We'll be watching." When they were called back in, the atmosphere had changed. Thomas was gone. The executives looked resigned. Chen stood as they entered. "We accept your terms," he said simply. "Thomas has been placed on administrative leave pending review. Lin will be promoted to general manager, effective immediately." Andre nodded, surprised but pleased by this immediate action. "We'll engage a training firm this week," Chen continued. "And I'd like to have your team review our reservation and hiring policies to ensure they meet your standards." "Our standards should be everyone's standards," Andre replied. "Equal treatment regardless of race, gender, or any other factor." Chen nodded slowly. "Yes, they should be." He paused, then added, "For what it's worth, Mr. Reynolds, I'm deeply sorry for what happened. This isn't how I wanted to run my business, but I allowed certain practices to continue unchallenged. That ends today." The sincerity in his voice seemed genuine. Andre studied him for a moment, then extended his hand. "I believe in second chances, Mr. Chen. What matters is what happens next. As they left the pinnacle, Andre felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Last night's humiliation had been transformed into something powerful, a catalyst for real change. Outside on the sidewalk, Dr. Kwan touched his arm. The investors called while we were in there. They've approved the full funding amount. We're expanding to Europe next quarter. Andre smiled. Despite everything, Horizon Innovations was moving forward. And perhaps the pinnacle would become a better place too. As they walked back to their waiting cars, Andre thought about all the times in his life when he had been asked to move, to step aside, to accept less than he deserved. Each time he had found a way to turn those moments into stepping stones rather than stumbling blocks. This time, he hadn't just stood up for himself. He had used his position to ensure that others wouldn't face the same treatment. That, he believed, was the true measure of success. Next stop, Europe, he said to his team as they prepared to head back to the office. But first, let's get some lunch. I know a place where they treat everyone with respect.